Stepdad refuses to pay for daughter's wedding after biological father is invited. For a long time, Godzilla_Moon had been in the life of his stepdaughter, so he felt as if she were his daughter. This is quite a normal occurrence too. In the Reddit post, however, he observed that there was another father figure who came into their lives at times. When she wanted it, her biological father wouldn't pay attention to his daughter, but he would turn up from out of the blue and stake a place in her life. He said that she would be left in the lurch by her biological dad, breaking her heart in the process. Godzilla_Moon obviously cared for her feelings, and this made him very uncomfortable. Despite the reality that the biological dad of the bride-to-be did not seem to care about his fatherly responsibilities, his daughter did not stop fawning over him. She realized that at a moment's notice he would often let her down and vanish, but she liked him too much in her life. She was blind to his adverse characteristics and did not seem to recognize that her stepfather was way more of a father than her biological dad would ever be. This made Godzilla_Moon very angry. This stepdad, who went on Reddit under the name Godzilla_Moon, wished to share his tale with the public to know whether or not he was being unreasonable. He stated to the readers that he had no doubts about the reality that he was part of the family after 10 years and a major part in the life of his stepdaughter. He's been dedicated to his wife and her daughter, but at her wedding, something occurred that made him more than a little upset and turned everything upside down at the blink of an eye. Godzilla_Moon clarified that throughout the previous decade, he had lived with his wife and the bride-to-be, and that he was the family's breadwinner. He always made sure that they were well looked after, and he offered to pay for her education even when the time came for his stepdaughter to graduate high school and think about college. Because of this, he found himself $40,000 in debt, but he didn't bat an eye. He saw her as his true daughter, so it was more than worth it. He did it all for her. The stepdad, though, did not stop there. During college, he also let his stepdaughter live with him and her mom in his house, and he even purchased her a car as a present for graduating from high school. Godzilla_Moon always wanted to make sure she was pleased and healthy, and when his stepdaughter discovered the guy she wished to marry, this became even more essential. Since her biological dad was not very often around, Godzilla_Moon walked up to the plate and offered to pay for her big day. Godzilla_Moon also verified within the Reddit thread that the deadbeat father had never paid any kind of child support or given their family any monetary assistance. He did not want to pay for the wedding either, which implies the stepdad had to pay for it all. Godzilla_Moon was pleased to do so, until a family dinner was announced by his stepdaughter. The bride-to-be said her biological dad agreed to walk her down the aisle, and this Reddit user was not pleased with that at all. Godzilla_Moon wanted more than anything to invite one of his golf buddies to the wedding. He was close to both the bride and the groom, and he was surprised to hear that he wasn't invited when he ran into his buddy on the golf course. He knew, however, that the bride was in the process of getting married. That's because he and the rest of the guest suggestions from Godzilla_Moon had received a piece of paper in the mail that served as a notice of their marriage. Godzilla_Moon was highly angry when he heard of this notice. He wanted to pay for her big day with his hard-earned money, but the bride-to-be wouldn't even accept his demands. That wasn't all, unfortunately. When he asked his golf buddy if he could see the notification of the wedding from his stepdaughter, Godzilla_Moon found out that he was not even named on it. It was as if his stepdaughter completely ignored his involvement, and he simply couldn't figure out what was going on. For Godzilla_Moon, this announcement was the last straw, because he had reached the end of his rope. Since he was denied the opportunity to invite some members close to the family, his annoyance had bubbled up. The stepfather did not believe it was unreasonable for him to suggest 20 guests to be invited to the big day of his stepdaughter, given that he was paying for the wedding. The venue had spots for about 250 individuals, and more than enough space was available. Godzilla Moon decided to raise his grievances with his partner instead of being quiet and keeping his ideas to himself. He believed that she could make sense of the choices of her own daughter as the bride's mom. His partner, however, sided with her own daughter. She noted that they couldn't accommodate his requests on the guest list, but that if those they invited couldn't come, they might be able to squeeze the others in. This debate ultimately culminated in an enormous fight. Godzilla Moon had to fight the verbal battle on Saturday night with his girlfriend, but they had to set aside their grievances for the next day's festivities. The bride and groom had arranged a big family meal to bring their two families together, and Godzilla Moon crossed his fingers that the dinner was not attended by her biological dad. Unfortunately, his fingers crossed were just not enough to maintain the true dad of the bride at bay, because he quickly saw him sitting at the table opposite him. When everyone sat at the table and their two families came together, the stepdaughter of Godzilla Moon stood up from her chair and made the announcement. She was over the moon to say the wedding would be attended by her biological dad, and he'd even walk her down the aisle. Even though the table became overwhelmed with excitement, there was a man who wasn't too excited about the news. In fact, she made her stepfather overcome with rage that he simply couldn't control. Although he wanted to lash out and vent his anger, Godzilla Moon realized he had to maintain it. He didn't want to spoil the dinner of his stepdaughter, but he couldn't maintain his ideas to himself either. So he drew up a plan to show everyone around the table just what he thought about it. Following in the footsteps of the stepdaughter he had taken care of over the previous 10 years, he stood up to make an announcement from his chair. Godzilla Moon actually wanted to make a toast. This is common during family get-togethers and unique occasions, but this one would be a bit distinct. He did not want to get straight to the negatives, though. He wanted to lull the visitors into a fake sense of safety, saying it was a joy to spend the previous decade with his family. He thought he had to thank the bride and groom for teaching him something more than anything else. There was no awareness among the visitors around the table that Godzilla Moon was going to bring down his speech. They presumed from his words that he would make a heartfelt statement of love and listened attentively. So, for what did the bride and groom receive their thank you? He thanked both of them for making him realize he wasn't exactly the guy he believed he was. He thought he had a strong place in their family after all, but he soon realized it wasn't true. However, his speech was far from over. He observed that he was stupid enough to think he was loved and cherished within the hearts of all, but he quickly realized that he was just a cash machine they used for their extravagant lifestyles. In reality, he admitted that he felt like a good stream of money, but not much else. Ultimately, he had to make a choice, and he confirmed that choice in front of the audience. Godzilla Moon said as he spoke to the room that he had one last thing to say. Because he was not only removed from their wedding notice, wedding invitations, and the wedding ceremony as a whole, he decided to withdraw his offer. He wasn't a component of the marriage after all, so why would he pay for it? He noted this honor should go to the biological father of the bride-to-be, who was obviously an enormous part of her life. The farce was now over in his eyes. The stepfather was explicit in saying he would no longer pay for the wedding, but he wanted to create quite a few other plain stipulations as well. He was finished paying for the extravagant lifestyle of his wife and her daughter, and so he was going to totally rescind his participation. He wanted them both to move out of his house and reminded them that their joint bank account would be drained because it was all his cash anyway. The true father of the bride could handle them now. The Reddit thread from Godzilla Moon created a stir, and many thanked him for standing on his own. They wished for an update on his condition, however, and he was more than pleased to comply. He indicated in a subsequent post that both his wife and daughter had moved out of his house and made some adjustments to the wedding day. They had to scale back the extravagant plans without his resources and lose some unique characteristics. Of course, Godzilla Moon's partner did not move out without a fight. She attempted to reason with her boyfriend, and the morning after, she even attempted to convince him to withdraw his toast. She showed him a copy of the wedding plans and all the details to make the day perfect for her daughter. His partner noted that their hard work would ruin them, but Godzilla Moon didn't care for any of it. He made his choice and stuck with it. In fact, the final nail in the coffin for Godzilla Moon was what he discovered in these marriage plans. He went across a few pages that caught his eye as he scouted through the pages and pages of information. He discovered that within the chapter focusing on traditional father-daughter dancing, his former stepdaughter had selected songs that her biological father loved. She also catered the wedding menu to the taste of her father. It was as though he wouldn't even be a part of the wedding. While seeing the people he thought were his family moving out of his house made him sad, he couldn't wait to get rid of them as well. He quickly discovered he had made the correct choice because he discovered something rather interesting a few hours before draining their joint account. His former wife, in reality, had attempted to write a check from the cash in their joint account and wanted to sign up for the single life. Fortunately, Godzilla Moon figured it all out just in time. Despite the reality that after an entire decade, Godzilla Moon rescinded his offer to pay for the wedding, he still lost some cash. After all, certain aspects of the wedding were already paid for, and the checks were cashed. He could get refunds for a few items, but they refused to give him a refund of the full amount from the wedding venue they booked. That's why he lost about $1,500. However, if he hadn't put his foot down and stood up for himself, he would have lost a lot more. Reddit was furious, and not a single one of them could believe what they were reading. One woman wrote, "As a woman and a mother, it shames me to see women acting like this towards someone like you. It is women like this that give the rest of us a bad name and label many as gold diggers. I don't know if it is the culture or background or upbringing, but I can surely say that it is your right to do what you did, and you should never feel bad about it." User Brisky V wrote, "They handled that beautifully. I'm a young woman with both a real dad and a stepdad in my life I love very much. I've often wondered which would walk me down the aisle. My two dads hate each other, so I worry about offending the other. Would you have felt better if she asked both of you to walk her down the aisle? As in one dad on each arm?" Godzilla Moon gave his response as well. "Your situation is probably different to ours. If real dad has contributed time and money to raising you throughout your life, has shared in alleviating the anguish that is bringing up a teenage girl, rather than contributing to it, then you should be fine. Ask them both to meet you, ask them to do it as a favor to you. No man could refuse that." There were numerous Redditors who agreed with him. However, there were still quite a few who thought his reaction was a bit overboard, and those were the people who eventually turned the tide and tried to see if this story was even real or not. Godzilla Moon does try to present himself as the protagonist in this story, but there were still some folks out there who thought that he made some major mistakes in how he was trying to portray the whole situation. They were not necessarily calling him out and stating that it was a fake story. There were just too many variables that made them a bit skeptical. One Redditor wrote, "Something's not sitting right with me, can't help it. The people I've known where their parents saw them as parasites were situations where parents allowed them to be parasites and controlled and manipulated them with money. I honestly don't think he's innocent in any of it." There were a few others who agreed with the above comment. They did agree that the women in this story were terrible, but they still thought that Godzilla Moon was a part of the problem too. After all, he was the one who allowed them to be who they were. As one Redditor wrote, "Yeah, I'm kind of feeling what you're saying. Incredible disrespect from his side of the story, but an overreaction if the subject of him being excluded hadn't been talked about before." Numerous other people quickly jumped up on the topic of him overreacting, and it quickly turned the story from "Yay for OP, original poster," to a question of if it was even deserved. As one Redditor stated, "This isn't the hero we need or deserve. This isn't a victory for the little guy. It's just an angry and self-centered man making a spectacle to ease his hurt pride." I sympathize with that, I get it. What I don't get is how you can expect a position of honor that is based on love when it's painfully obvious that you wanted it for respect. Other Redditors took it to a whole new level and were much harsher. One said, "You abandoned your kid. I can see you walking out on paying for the wedding, even being mad. I can see you raising a stink. But as you said, you cut both of them out of your life forever. Let me make this clear. You cut the child you raised out of your life forever. You said you want to be treated like a real father? real fathers don't cut their daughters out of their life. One of the Redditors then asked Godzilla Moon, "What makes you any better than her natural father? You're disgusting." However, that quickly backfired and Godzilla Moon had people come to his rescue. SRS Loves Gawker wrote that men have to deal with a lot of nonsense, while also requiring very little in return. But those things we require are absolute. Those things are respect, consideration, and appreciation. He had all the right to cut them out, seeing that he was not receiving that. Another Redditor said, no, they cut him out. He finally decided to go along with it. While the story was presumed to be genuine, some things prompted it might have been a made-up story. For one, Godzilla Moon is a username linked to a few posts, all linked to this viral tale. On top of it all, these messages all seem to have been written in a short period of time. Not a single one of them was actually older than the day the story was published. He didn't answer many questions and apparently fell off the face of the earth. It may have been to safeguard his own privacy, but there may have been another explanation. Some have pointed out that a false story could suggest this sudden disappearance. In fact, a few years after the story broke first, Snopes investigated the question of whether it was real or not. The study pointed out that instead of remaining one-dimensional, none of the primary players in the tale had any actual growth or change. In addition, Snopes said it relied heavily on deeply entrenched stereotypes of shiftless women and the meal ticket men they routinely drain dry. Nothing is conclusive, however, so it is up to you to decide.